Many churches dot the town of Nipigon, and of these churches, the first to be built and hold service was in 1888 under the guidance of Anglican Reverend Robert Renison, who ministered at St. Mary's the Virgin from 1880 to 1894. Also worth noting that Reverend Robert Renison, whom one of our streets are named after, his oldest son, also named Robert, became the Bishop of Moosonee, and in later years became the Bishop of Toronto. The Reverend's wife and 6-year-old son Frank are buried in the small cemetery beside the rectory. The oldest stone in the cemetery dates from 1883, and the last recorded burial was in 1924. The cemetery also holds the bodies of 7 men who died in a tragic explosion around Auden on Monday, February 15, 1909, while constructing the Transcontinental Railway, and taken back by bobsled through 135 miles of ice and snow to Nipigon, and laid to rest in this cemetery. The men were killed while camping 15 feet into a rock. Nels Munson, foreman of the 9-man crew, accidentally struck a dynamite charge. When the debris was cleared, 4 men were found beneath and 3 mangled beyond recognition. 2 men survived the blast but could barely move an inch due to the fallen rock. It took 40 men 2 hours to dig the bodies out of the crater. The men killed were Nels Munson, foreman; Knut Lundquist, foreman's helper; Knut Nelson, Bjornset; Anton Gustafsson; Magnus Andersson; Oscar Lundgren; and Oscar Sablom. The men were laid in coffins for their grim journey to Nipigon. The original crosses that marked the men's final resting place eventually began to degrade and were handed to the Nipigon Historical Museum for preservation by Reverend Doug McClure. A memorial service was held for these men by the St. Mary's Anglican Church on their Sunday, February 15, 2009 service. Prior to the construction of Renison's Anglican Church, services were held at the home of Junior Chief Trader of the Hudson's Bay Company Red Rock Post, the 6'1" Irishman, Newton Flanagan, whom Newton Street is named after. The house, built in the French provincial style using a post and beam construction, believed to be built by Mr. Flanagan, may well be one of the oldest homes in Nipigon. Mr. Flanagan retired from service at the Hudson's Bay Company and moved to St. Paul, Minnesota in about 1892. The house changed hands many times over the years, with legal documents indicating transfer from the governor and the adventurers of England all the way through to the Shaftesbury clan in the year 2000, who planned to make restorations to its former grand character, and now occupied by Mr. Steve Gregorchuk. In 1885, the Canadian Pacific Railway came through. Services were held in the waiting room of the original CPR station, then found on the west side of the tracks. The Hudson's Bay Company sold the property to the Diocese of Algoma, Church of England in 1908 for the sum of $2, so that a house could be built for the then Anglican minister, Benjamin Philip Fuller, who ministered from 1902 to 1909. As well as being used as a house for the clergy and their families, between 1930 and 1938, the house was leased out to the detachment and barracks for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Complete with hydroelectricity and heated with 3 wood stoves, the home was located on the intersection of Riverview and 2nd Street. A new rectory was built next to the original St. Mary's Anglican Church, and this property was sold as a private home in 1956, and still features some of the same charm while undergoing several improvements over the years, located at 14 2nd Street. Years later, the original St. Mary's Anglican Church was demolished. 14 years after the museum fire, in 2004, a new St. Mary's Anglican Church was built on the southeast corner of 2nd and Newton Street. Other notable historic churches in Nipigon include the picturesque Little Catholic Church built in 1906, which surprisingly holds about 70 people and has a 15-seat gallery. Originally located on the southwest corner of 2nd and Newton Street, a new, much larger church was built beside it in 1952, named the Annunciation of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Before Mac McCullough purchased the building, the bell tower was removed, and Mac rolled the building down 2nd Street to its current location beside the Anglican Cemetery, originally a clay tennis court. It became the Church of the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Catholic Ukrainian. The church was renovated and the floor replaced as well, but the building still retains its original windows. The church is now the property of Mr. Ron Cheatham. The Nipigon Presbyterian Church was built in 1899. William McCurdy, whom McCurdy Avenue is named after, built the wooden pews, and his wife Georgina played the organ, taught Sunday school, and formed the Ladies' Aid. Between 1920 and 1923, the church also doubled as extra classrooms for the public school across the street. In 1925, it became known as the United Church. On Christmas Eve 1946, while leaning away reading a posting on the bulletin board, second-year Reverend Don Tansley narrowly avoided death as he rang the bell. It suddenly came loose, falling 30 feet and crashed through the floor in front of him. He wished to go on with the Christmas Eve service, but was urged not to by Dr. Jeffrey after remolding his nose. Oddly enough, later that same year, the bell was struck by a bolt of lightning. The bell can be seen today hanging above the sign at Grace United Church on 5th Street. In 1965, the Hydroelectric Commission purchased the building for Nipigon Hydro, while several businesses also occupied it over the years, including the local paper, the North Shore Sentinel. It also was home to a herbalist shop and the local dentist. This church was found behind the site of the Nipigon Inn.